All right, Jeff, you're saved from our argument about refs and their influence on the game. Let's bring on Coach Gary Waters, author, former coach, very interested spectator this time of year. Coach,
Yeah.
thank you for rescuing Jeff. He objected to my criticizing a call in a basketball game last night, and
Wait, hold on. Don't rescue me for this. So Coach, Jason's talking about last night that there was a call at the end of the Sanford game.
Yeah. I
My
seen it.
point is that there are calls that go both ways in the
Yeah,
course of a game,
that's true.
and
That
that you
is.
should never blame if you made the game close enough, that you shouldn't be blaming a ref who's a human for a call impacting the end of a game,
and
because there were calls all during the course of a game.
and my point is not that the team shouldn't have put themselves in that position going down 20. And there were calls that went the wrong way on both sides, but it's not blaming the ref to question whether the call was actually wrong in that moment.
Well, Jeff, I tell you, he's kind of got some validity there.
Jeff, I'm going to clip that, and I will be using it.
He has so changed his argument. But what's your look? You've been in those situations, I'm sure. So how do you deal with that, and what do you say to your players?
Well, at the moment, everyone's frustrated because those situations occurred. But like similar to what Jason said, that you got to tell them that, hey, your team. If we're talking about your team, you can't blame one call on the game. You gotta go back and you got to look at the things that went on through the game. And you should not have put yourself in that situation because we're a better team. That kind of concept. However, I think they should have today, like, in the NBA, they got you can check things in the rules today. They should have something at the end of the game that you get one check situation. So they're going to have to change the rule. Right now, it is what it is. It's the human error, and you can't do anything about it.
So since you're talking about replay, essentially.
Yeah.
There was another interesting situation that happened at the beginning of this tournament in the Gonzaga game. Mark Few had to tell them to turn off the other game that was literally playing on the scoreboard as their game was going on. So
I thought that was crazy.
His point was, first of all, you're literally impacting the live game because people were cheering as players are shooting free throws about another game. And his second point is, look, if you're not that interested in this game that you need to watch another one, then let somebody else come to the game and sit there. How would you feel if you were in a tight NCAA tournament game or any type game, and all of a sudden on the scoreboard, there's another game playing?
Man, I thought that was crazy. That shouldn't have been. I mean, that was really, really crazy. And they got to figure out a way not to let something like that happen, because that couldn't, it just happened. The game they were in, it wasn't a tight game. But just think if it is. I mean, that could turn out to be disastrous.
Yeah, that was unbelievable to see. I mean, there's so many different storylines here. You see the game last night with Kentucky going down. Obviously, there's the implications for, what Kentucky does there. I'm more fascinated by the Oakland coach who spent 40 years at that school to build that program, took them from Division II to Division I. The stories of those players. What do you think when you see
let me give you a little bit about him, because I was in his league in Division II. And then when I went on and my career continued on all throughout. And then when my last school I was at, Oakland, he joined that league. His Oakland, that was the league that they joined, the Horizon League. So Cappy and I, we really go way back. And I'm from Michigan. He's from Michigan. And, he's done some wonderful things there to bring that school from one point to the next. And that was a tremendous, tremendous win. But you know what? Kentucky, I think, messed up everybody's pool. You know that. I mean, that was the biggest mess up in history. I must say that.
Can I tell my wife that? Because at this point, she's going to ask Jeff to make her picks next year rather than me, the way that her.
Well, you know what? Let's talk about that just a second, because they were really on him really hard, and they should have been, because you don't lose a game like that. But he did. These things happen in life, but it's understandable under the situation he's in. See, even though he's got a lifetime contract, he's making all this money. The issue that is there is he's taking young freshman kids and going into an environment and trying to be successful. And that's not an easy task because they're going to make errors down the stretch and they're going to do things that they haven't, thought would happen because they're so young. They haven't experienced any of this stuff before. And so he's taking on a major challenge. Now, being rewarded for it, I can't complain about that. But at the same time, he's taking on a major challenge.
Jay Wright spoke to that in the post game of the loss. And he said the era of these young freshmen trying to play against older players is over because more will stay with NIL. So you're going to have more experienced players staying in school. So this model of bringing in all young guys and putting the team together because they're talented won't fly. Is that one of the ancillary benefits or changes that NIL is having? Is that more experience is returning in these tournaments?
Well, I think so. And I also think that is a positive for the NIL. Everyone looks at the NIL and think only negatives, but that is a positive that kids are staying in school longer today. And that was a concern because you have all these fan base that don't even know the players on their team for 1 year. And then they're gone, especially at Kentucky, because those are one and doneers. And now all of a sudden, now you can have a relationship. You can understand who they are. You can understand their lives, what they're going through, and then now you can support them. But the way the way that was going before, it really was a tough situation.
Well, the problem though is you're right that players may stick around longer, but they're moving more. So the fan base is.
Hey, Jeff, I didn't say any of the negative parts of this thing because there are many, many negatives.
I mean, to me, that's part of the problem is, yes, it's great that student athletes will stick around longer. The problem is they're not sticking around in the same place longer. So you're not, I mean, a college basketball is very allegiance based. And it's the alumni that kind of drive it. And the alumni are not getting used to, look, the Kentuckys are still going to have the one and dones, but programs that thrive on players sticking around aren't getting to have those players sticking around. I mean, look, I come from a school, Michigan, that's got all sorts of problems right now, and I don't think they have anybody left on their team, which is a problem, including their coach.
Yeah.
And Hunter Dickinson, you see, left and went to Kansas. So it's still hard to have an allegiance and to know who the players are because they're not staying in the same markets or the same schools.
I would definitely agree with that, and that's a big problem with that whole concept. But you know what? Like I said when we talked a long time ago, that I didn't think they prepared themselves for this. When I mean the NCAA, they didn't prepare for this. Now it's upon us. And they can't control it. It's out of control. However, like I said, there are some good things about it, and there are some bad things about it. And that one thing that you mentioned is really a tough thing about it.
I know they can't control how many people go into the transfer portal, but can't they control when it opens? The idea of the transfer portal opening right after the selection show, before the tourney starts. So you've got these coaches that are trying to figure out whether their guys are even going to stay on their team, and they have to recruit them to stay there as they're either prepping to play in the tourney or prepping for the end of the season, or in another scenario, deciding not to play in the NIT because they have to go recruit now. Is that something that can change?
Oh man, you hit it right on the head. I don't know if you know this, both of you, that I'm on the NIT committee, and I spent the whole weekend in Indianapolis deciding on teams. And at the last minute, we had a situation that one team couldn't come because of similar situations. So now we got to change the whole thing, and we only had 45 minutes to do so. So I'm gonna tell you, it's a tough situation we're dealing with today, and I don't think there's an answer, and there is an immediate answer anytime soon. But they're gonna have to figure it out. And here's the other thing I really struggled with the whole NIL and the transfer portal. I thought they should have only had one come out at a time. One should have come out, and then they should have figured it out, and then brought in the next. Now they got them both, so they're using each other. I mean, people that are going into the transfer portal are saying, hey, you don't put me in the portal. I mean, you don't give me any money. I'm going into the portal. Okay, I mean, all kinds of things that are happening. And then what ends up happening is the coach gets fired because all his players are gone.
You know, Coach, we've talked to you so many times about character because of your book and who you are. Uh, my question is now about leadership as it relates to exactly what you're talking. So you're on the NIT committee,
Right.
as you know, Pitt and St. John's, and I thought there was a third school, were selected to the NIT and said thanks but no thanks. What is that? We're trying to teach young student athletes about competition and character. What does it say to those individuals when coaches and athletic directors are saying we didn't get what we want, and so now we're just going to shut it down? We're not going to give you a chance to get better by playing in more games. We're not going to give you a chance to enjoy. For a lot of these kids, it's the last time they'll play organized basketball. We're just going to shut it down because we didn't get what we want.
Right, right. Well, you know, that's really a tough situation, and like you were talking earlier, there could be other circumstances involved. You know, like I know a couple of the teams the issue was concerning the kids had left and went into the portal. So they went to the players that were still there, and it was only I don't say a few, but they weren't as many as before. But some of the better players were gone. Now all of a sudden you're asking them to go in there, and they're saying, "Coach, we can't go in there. We don't have anybody." And
Wow.
I get everything, I understand it, but we got to figure this thing out because it's only going to hurt the kid. You know, think about it. The NIL is so dominant today, right now. Everybody's excited, but you know who is hurting? It's hurting the high school kid. Okay, because he's coming out and he's looking at this, and they're getting older people that are asking for this money, and then they're coming out in the portal, and so they really don't have to recruit that high school kid anymore. And that's not what this thing was all meant to be. It was meant to have a progression that each person will end up having a part of what we're doing in this process. Now we're losing all that.
So wait, I just want to follow up, Jason, if you don't mind. So because I misunderstood, I assumed that the Rick Pitino's of the world and Caples of the world were not going to the NIT because they didn't get into the NCAA. What you're saying is very interesting. You're saying that that's not necessarily the case. It's that kids have left the school the second that the selection show was over for the NCAA.
Well, that's what Jason talked about it. It came
Wow.
out at that time. And so they didn't wait. They just immediately left. Now, there are some coaches, and I can't get into that because I'm a part of that whole thing. But that said, hey, you didn't play, you didn't have a great season. We're ready to leave. We're ready to shut this thing down. But there are many because of these issues that are occurring. Now, why are they going into the portal? I'm telling you, a large percentage are going in there because of the money situation. So you got a two-edged sword just constantly hitting you, and you don't know how to deal with this. And if I'm an athletic director or if I'm a coach today, this is a trying time.
Well, and it seems like I mean, you've seen more of it in football than basketball so far, but you're seeing coaches kind of go to the pros, take assistant coaching jobs in the pros so they don't have to deal with some of this stuff. It just seems like it's a time of chaos in college sports. You've got the portal and the NIL issues. You've got a judge saying they can't enforce NIL regulations. You've got lawsuits with Clemson trying to leave the ACC. You've got Dartmouth trying to not accept a union while Congress scrutinizes it. As somebody who's involved in the direction and the leadership of the NCAA and the NIT tournament, how are you all feeling right now as you function in this environment?
Well, it's a tough time. I must say that, but it is the time. We can't pull back. It's the door has been opened. Now you got to understand there's a reason why this door is open, because for many years people were being used in the process, and now a judge finally said you got to stop this. You got to share all that's going on, and I get all that. But you got to look at the whole process, and that's where the problem is coming. Think about it. You got a kid that's saying he wants an NIL of a certain amount of money on a football team, and he's the quarterback, and he gets it. But what about the other, 18 other players out there? They're saying, man, this guy got the money. I got a block for him, and I don't get a penny. So, there are all kinds of issues. And now they have a collective. I think you've heard of that, the collective where they bring all the money together and they're trying to do something. But they gotta work this out, and they gotta figure it out, because it's not an easy thing to figure out, because no one prepared for this.
Well,
But they go ahead.
is the answer then, as much as I cringe at how many years I've said no way, is the answer then to have the universities or the conferences or the NCAA, whatever body ends up existing, paying the players directly, and then they're basically being contracts so that players then stay. They're committed now that the university has made them employees, as opposed to them leaving. Because as I watched the tournament, I cannot help but think every time I see one of the mid majors or smaller schools that when a player does well, I sit there and go, well, as soon as their run is over, they're being recruited by a Power Five school to leave.
Well, let me give you this. This isn't just the beginning. This started a little ways back. Now, we know all the stuff go all the way back, but there's something that created this monster. And I'm going to tell you, what created it was the 5th-year transfer rule. I don't know if we talked about that, but that was such a rule that changed the dynamics of college athletics. Now, the 5th-year transfer rule has been in for many years. It's not something new, but no one really used it. The only one used it was football. A kid would be let's say a quarterback. He didn't get to play, so he finishes his fourth year and gets his degree. Now he can go anywhere he wants to go to get another degree. I mean, that means to get his master's degree. They didn't forgot about that. They just said, hey, we don't care where you go, just get someplace. And now what's happening is you would lose that player. Now with the transfer portal, and with the last rule they just passed that you can go anytime, how many times, man, this is, I had a coach tell me the other day that if you want any information to figure this thing out, go to the NBA and ask them about what happens in free agency. You will see exactly what's happening in the world today. And he's exactly right.
I wanted to ask, it obviously would impact you at the NIT. There's a lot of talk about every year about teams that get snubbed. The Big East obviously had lots of complaints, even though all of their teams lost in the first round of the NIT, the ones that they really wanted to get into the tournament. So that doesn't help their case. But then you get a Virginia in the tournament who is barely competitive on the court, who doesn't make the committee's case. And then you have coaches talking about expanding the tournament.
Right.
Where are we going with this tournament where you don't dilute the product that they have, but you come to some compromise that, I don't know, leaves the NIT intact? Or I don't know, where are we going with these postseason tournaments?
Yeah, I don't either. Think about it in football where, everyone can go to a bowl if you're 500,
Yeah, Jeff's got complaints about that too. Don't worry.
But when you have all that, and what I get it, what they're saying is we want more opportunities for our kids after the season's over. And I get all that. But, the NCAA tournament has been tremendous over the years. Now, with the little guy you seen last night, what happened with Oakland. I mean, you just don't see that in anything else. In football, if you put a mid-major football team against a Power 5 football team, what would happen to that. People would get hurt. There'd be some injuries out there. But in college basketball, this is what's so unique about it. And if that ever goes away, then you really took away something that was very exciting. Now, extending it, adding more teams, I can see that happening. I can see, because if you add another day, you can add another 30 teams. So it's not like you're taking a long period of time and you're giving some support to other schools. However, I don't know where does it stop. Think about it. You add another 30 teams, then all of a sudden the other 15 that didn't get in, they're playing, hey, we need to get in too. So you never stop. That's why the NIT is so valuable. And if the teams understand how valuable that is, because I'm gonna give you a prime example of this. Wisconsin, a year ago, they were the only really major Power Five team to make a commitment to the NIT. Now, there were some others that went in, but they made a commitment to it. And their coach said, we're going in it because we're developing our team for next year. So when we play again next year, we can have success. Look at this year. They almost won the Big Ten championship, and now they're in the NCAA, and you don't know what will happen today, but I think they'll be highly, highly competitive.
Yeah, why? You're right. I just don't see why we need to expand it. There's always going to be a bubble. Unless you have every single team, somebody's always going to be griping that they should have been in. So
Yeah.
why make, if you can't make it as one of the now 68 teams,
Right.
not go to the NIT where you can still compete. Yeah, you can get ready for next year, but you're also teaching student athletes to continue to compete. And they're giving them a chance, for some of them, especially for seniors, a chance to play one more time. To me, there's value in that.
It's all value with it. And I'll give you an example of that. When I was at Rutgers, my third year, my first year, we went to the NIT, okay? And our players didn't want to go because we thought we were in the big dance, and we didn't make it. It was on the last second shot kind of concept, and everybody was frustrated. So, but
I remember that, Coach.
See it, and everybody was frustrated. I get it, and I understand it. But then I didn't really talk to the kids. I just said, hey, we're going into the NIT because we needed to get our program going. We went in there, and they didn't come to play. And it was the worst experience I had with the NIT because we let Yale beat us on our own home court, and I thought was really crazy.
I remember that also, Coach.
You remember that too. Then 2 years after that, we had a real good year, and it was coming to an end and we ended up losing at Virginia Tech on a tip in at the buzzer. And that really, because we were going to get an NCAA bid. That was set if we win that game. Then we lose it, boom, they tip it in. And I'll tell you, I'll never forget that experience because when they tipped it in, I'm standing there looking at it as they tipped it in. And I tell you who was, Seth Greenberg was the coach at Virginia Tech. And he came up to me to shake my hand, and he grabbed my hand because I was still looking at the mask, and I was so stunned. So we didn't go. So in my mind, I said, hey, I don't know if they're going to be excited about going to the NIT. So I brought the whole team together. I had my coaches do up a contract that if you want to play in this, you sign this contract. Because I wanted to make sure they were going there to compete. And then they all said, yeah, we want to do it. They wanted to compete. They signed the contract. And I tell you what was unique. After they signed that contract, that night we had a practice. It was the greatest practice we had all season because they were just excited about being there. Then we got in the tournament. And if you remember, we ended up beating West Virginia. We beat Villanova. We beat Temple. We got to the finals. We beat
Made a run.
It was a good run. And something, now here's the uniqueness about it. Something that every player on that team will remember the rest of their lives. That's why the NIT is a valuable resource. You need to get in there and you need to do your best and enjoy that experience because it's a great, great experience. And we should have won the national title. We just missed it by a few points. But let me tell you what that means. See, it's the NIT, it's the NCAA. You still put up on those banners, national champion. And that's what you should, that's what you're playing for. And that's what it's all about.
Did you blame the ref?
You gotta go back there. You're just upset that he agreed with me. That's where it is, Coach. You give me a sound clip that will last long after your appearance on this particular show. Before we let you go, it is a good lead-in though to you got a new book coming out. Your son wanted you to do this one more than you did. Tell us about your book coming out about leadership, which is clearly reflected in how you handled those situations with Rutgers both years.
Well, let me tell you this though. You mentioned the one I'm writing right now. That's the one I'm writing, the one on leadership. However, I finished one that's ready to come out in the next month, and it's called Coaching Millennials from a Character Perspective.
Oh,
Now,
that's important now.
yeah, why millennials? Because that's when I was at Rutgers, and I'm talking about our experience at Rutgers with millennials. So, if and you, Jason, being from the past of Rutgers, this will be great. You'll love this book.
I will be reading.
So that's coming out in about a month. But now what I'm doing, I'm on a new venture, and I'm writing on my next book, and it'll be my third one. And it's and what I got to remember what I titled the thing. Well, I titled it something different. I titled it "Leaders Are Born If Not Discovered." And I'm talking about how do you become a leader? Are you born being a leader, or you grow and develop into a leader? And so I'm talking about that throughout the whole book. That's my objective. But the other part I'm talking about are the different leadership styles. And what I've come up with is 12 different leadership styles. And each chapter will be a leadership style. And the key to all this is, if you're a leader, you have to define who you are and decide what type of leadership you want to run, whatever business, whatever you're doing. However, you need to be aware of all the other leadership styles, because you may have to use the things that are within those leadership styles to run your business. For instance, it starts all the way. I'm starting with authoritarian. Okay, you deal with that. Okay, now today in our society, authoritarian or autocratic leader is not accepted. The kids today don't want to deal with that. So now, transformational, they love, because now they're being active, they're being a part of everything. And so it's going to be a great book. I'm really excited about it, because now leaders get to understand what it's all about, but at the same time, look at themselves and say, do I want to be this type of leader?
It seems like an interesting trajectory between your books, between character coach to then coaching millennials to then leadership. It seems like they all fit together very nicely in terms
Well,
of.
glad you said that, because in the book, I talked about the title of it, but then there's a subtitle that says, "What is it like coaching the millennials?" Okay, in certain generations. So that's the subtitle to it. So when you think about that, you have to think about the whole process, and why do you become a leader? And today in our society, I read a book, now to write this book, I done got together about 12, 13 books just to do research on. But in writing it, I read a book by on Lee, you remember Lee Iacocca, and his statement was, "Where have the leaders gone?" And think about it, in our society today, we can say that same thing. And it's just a duplication of what's going on from society or from generation to generation.
Well, we can't wait to see each of your next books come out. And when they do, we'll have to have you back to talk about it. Coach Gary Waters, thanks for always giving us some time and breaking it down and breaking down where we are in college sports. We appreciate it.
Well, it's been great talking with both you, Jason and Jeff. You've been outstanding as usual, and you make me think and make me bring out information that I shouldn't be bringing up, but I bring it out anyway. And we just enjoy ourselves.
Thanks so much, Coach. Have a great one.
Take care now.